This is YSL, which is like, okay, I'm wearing a Kukai dress, I'm in the club, I just spilled some Cafe Patron on it, I'm a whole mess, I'm too drunk, I'm getting kicked out at 3 AM, now I've got mascara tears running and my friends are trying to get me an Uber, but I'm still kind of hot. Hi there and welcome to Sense by Nez. I'm Nez. I'm an ex-fragrance trainer for some big luxury houses. I won't say who, I'm not going to reveal my secret so soon. I was a fragrance salesperson for many, many years and I'm just a current fragrance addict. So without any more foreplay, let's get straight into Ysl Libre. Now, when I first tried Ysl Libre, I didn't like it. Not that I even didn't like it, I had a visceral reaction. I had a hate towards it. I was working in Sydney Airport at the time and it had just launched and everybody on the fragrance floor was spraying this fragrance everywhere. There was displays everywhere, all the customers were spraying it on, and it was just heavy and cloying and sickly and sweet in the air of the airport, and it was just too much and I just wanted it to back off, if I'm being honest. It reminded me of being in high school and being in the locker room after PE and all the girls are like sweaty and gross and they're like spraying themselves down with impulse body spray and it's like this pheromone cheap sweet scent. I'm not selling Ysl Libre right now, am I? Hold on, there's a point to this. So when I first experienced it, it was through that lens. It was heavy and it was too much, it was cloying. So I did not enjoy it. Come a few weeks later, I buy something from YSL and I receive a few samples. Decide to try on the samples, actually try it on my skin, wear it around, and I realized that not very often am I wrong about a fragrance, but I was very much wrong about Libre. Once it was on the skin, it was an entirely different experience, and it was actually something that was beyond pleasant to actually being straight up good. Now let's talk a little bit about the notes. As an ex-fragrance trainer, I can tell you that there's a lot of things that go into a fragrance. There's lots of different notes and compounds that go in, but typically only a handful will be discernible. So when I talk about notes, I'm really only going to mention the ones that I think are particularly discernible, noticeable, or interesting within the fragrance. So with Ysl Libre, the top notes, lavender and blackcurrant, are the ones that stand out the most. In the heart of this fragrance, we have a white floral bouquet of jasmine, orange blossom, and then a little bit more of that lavender again. At the base is where it gets interesting, where we have musk, we have cedar, we have Madagascar vanilla, and finally we have ambergris. Now I want to talk about that ingredient ambergris because not many people know about it, and I do want to give you a little bit of, when you're on this channel, I want to give you a bit of fragrance education, right? So ambergris is whale phlegm, and I hate saying it and customers don't like hearing it, but that's what it was in nature traditionally. So whales would cough up a phlegm, it would float to the top of the sea and fishermen would come and collect it, and it is more valuable by the gram than gold. So this has been an ingredient that's been used in centuries and centuries of perfumery across different cultures. It's always existed, it's extremely prized. It has an animalistic, musky, extremely musky and almost sweet quality about it when it's kind of worked down into the scent format, which is essentially a kind of oil of sorts. Now, because we are destroying the planet, essentially, and we are causing issues in the sea, there are not so many whales, there's not so much natural ambergris around, and there's restrictions on fishing for these sorts of things in place. So for that reason, most brands, when they have ambergris listed as an ingredient, are actually talking about a synthetic compound. And in the case of Ysl Libre, I can almost guarantee that this is a synthetic compound that they're using to mimic that scent, because this is such a mass-produced fragrance, I can't imagine they'd want to spend that amount of money to get that amount of ambergris out there. Anyway, I just wanted to give you that little history on what ambergris is, because it is quite relevant to this fragrance. I would say it's quite a predominance, and it definitely gives it that warm animalistic quality to it in what would otherwise be just a white floral and sweet vanillic sort of bouquet. Now, in terms of how I feel about the fragrance or how it makes me feel, what I imagine when I smell this in a way is if you were to take a stem of lavender, like a natural raw lavender, and you were to candy coat it the way that you candy coat an apple, and then you were to give it like a pheromonal quality, that sort of a little bit of a sweaty quality almost, but in a really positive way, and that's again the ambergris at work there. That's sort of the feeling that you get with this. Floral, a little bit calming from that lavender, very much candied, and a little bit sweet and cloying and animalistic. So it's a very interesting fragrance in that sense, and it has fantastic silage, fantastic projection. So there's no issues on quality at all. And the bottle, my God, it's beautiful. I love that gold YSL. There's actually a bracelet that's like, it wraps around. It's like a cuff. I love that. I might get that. Actually, no, I won't get that. Anyway, I digress. The point is Ysl Libre is a fragrance that I would highly recommend if you are looking for something that's going to be long lasting, has a lot of impact, and people will notice on you. Now, if you like this fragrance but you find that it's a little bit too turned up for you, I would say, then there is a fragrance I could recommend that's sort of in a similar vibe, but almost like a daytime version of this, and that's Mon Guerlain by Guerlain. So that has a similar note of lavender in it, and then it also has that vanilla. And I think that fragrance is sort of like a daytime version of this almost, where it's still sexy and it's still warm and rich, but it's just a little bit toned down and not so. So these two fragrances, Mon Guerlain and Ysl Libre, I think they could almost be sisters in a sense, because they have those similar sort of vibe about them. However, I think the Mon Guerlain is almost like a girl who's in a Zimmermann dress and she's having brunch, she's having mimosas. It's a bit of a fresh Saturday affair, but you know she's got a little bit of a wild side to her as well. Versus YSL, which is like, okay, I'm wearing a Kokai dress, I'm in the club, I just spilled some Cafe Patron on it, I'm a whole mess, I'm too drunk, I'm getting kicked out at 3 a.m. now, I've got mascara tears running and my friends are trying to get me an Uber, but I'm still kind of hot. And it's like a little bit hoey, a little bit messy, but overall, it's kind of cool. It's a vibe. Like, people will remember this girl. They'll remember her crying outside the club. She's a vibe. Now, I've had both those fragrances, so I don't know what that says about me, and I'm not going to explore it. Now, as you can see, I've got a smaller bottle here. I've got the 30ml, and the reason for that is I like the fragrance. I don't like it that much. I have a huge collection, and I don't need to be buying lots of new 100ml bottles. So, in terms of will I ever repurchase this once it's finished, I'm going to say the honest truth, and that's no. And that's because there are a couple of downsides to this fragrance. And the downsides are extremely personal to me, and they might not be a downside to you, because if we're talking about quality, it's a good quality fragrance. Now, the downsides have got to do with how popular it is and how common it has almost become. So I know in Sydney that this launch did fantastically, so many bottles were sold, and it's to the point where a random friend of mine, a guy who has, you know, no interest in the world of perfumery or anything, smelled me and goes, oh, you smell like a girl I went on a date with last week. Like, he could pinpoint that it was this fragrance and it was that girl, and I just thought, okay, this is getting too common. So I had a good run with this fragrance where I wore it for a couple of months straight, but I do feel like, yeah, unfortunately it has become fairly common, and I don't want to wear something that absolutely everyone's wearing. So I think I'll bust it out here and there, but it's probably not something I'm going to continue to use frequently anymore. Now, the other reason I wouldn't be using this frequently anymore is because I did kind of have a heavy-handed go at it for 2 months, and I did find that I had the exact feeling happen all over again that I had at the airport, where I felt like it was sweet, it was cloying, and it was too much. And that is very much the case with this fragrance. When you overuse it, when you overspray it, when it's around all the time, it does sometimes get to the point of where you're like, all right, enough. It's just too sugary, it's too floral, it's too punchy, it's too much. So I think if you purchase this fragrance, think about it as a treat here and there. I don't think this would be a very good signature scent. If you live in Sydney, Australia, or if you live in Australia in general, I don't think that this would be a good everyday scent for you anyway, because especially going into spring and summer here, it gets so hot, and this fragrance would just, no, it would be the most awful thing in those 40-degree days. I can't imagine anything worse. So if you live in a hot climate, this is not for you. This is definitely a more wintry type of fragrance. Now, I will mention, because I do own it and I do feel like trashing it, that I do have a 10ml of the EDT as well that I received as a gift when I bought this. Normally you don't get a gift with a 30ml size, but I've got friends in perfumed places, so I got a couple of these actually. And I have used a bit of it, but mostly at the gym, and the reason for that is it's terrible. It's like a hard pass. There's nothing to this fragrance. It's kind of like a white floral, slightly spicy, I don't even know where that's come from, but citrusy kind of just, It's like a bit of a carry-on. It's just nothing. There's nothing to it. Yeah, I'm just going to spray it again to remind myself how lame it is. Yeah, no, it's just citrus, a bit of white florals. Honestly, a body spray company like Impulse could have released this and it would have been, yeah, just as good. If you're going to go for it, go for the EDP. There's also an intense version these days, I believe. I don't know if you need to go any more intense than this. This is already pretty intense, and again, depending on the climate of where you live, I think it might already be too intense. Now my final thoughts on Ysl Libre. It's fantastic fragrance. It's got absolutely beautiful packaging. Love that Y thing. It's got great sillage, great projection. It lasts on the skin. All of those things are there. So in terms of high quality, you're not missing out on anything there. The scent itself is almost like a candied lavender with a slightly animalistic kind of pheromonal, warm, sexy quality, which I think is what makes it a little bit slutty. I'm just gonna say it. God damn it, it's a little bit slutty. That's what it is, okay? I no longer work in the industry, I can say it. So that's sort of what's up with Ysl Libre. Now the only downsides, and there are a couple of downsides, is that it's fairly common, and just like that incident that happened to me, people might smell it and go, oh, this reminds me of so-and-so, because a lot of people bought it. It was a huge launch, and yeah, so it's a common fragrance these days. Now, the other part of it that I think is a bit of a downside is that it is very cloying, it is very sweet. I think it's great if you have a perfume wardrobe, so it can be like your sexy night out sort of fragrance. But I think if you're planning on buying it as like an everyday scent, I think it can turn you off shortly. The EDT is garbage. I cannot repeat that enough. Do not get the EDT. It's absolute garbage. Yeet that. And that brings me to the end of the video. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, press like and subscribe and do all of that. And I'll see you for the next fragrance. You can even tell me what fragrance you want next and I might do it. Might fuck around and do it for you. Alright, goodbye now.